Hiya gang, I'm MyRadar meteorologist Matthew Cappucci. It's Valentine's Day, which I'm definitely not bitter about. I guess that table will stay set forever. Now, you might have fun plans with a special someone, or you might be a meteorologist. That's why we're looking back at some of the most memorable storms to ever strike on Valentine's Day. Obviously, Valentine's Day comes smack dab in the midst of wintertime in the Northern Hemisphere. In recent years, we've had some historic Arctic blasts around Valentine's Day. Consider Valentine's Day 2016. Boston got down to 9 below, at the time their coldest reading since 1957. It was so cold that Arctic sea smoke developed, basically a weird fog resulting from frigid air passing over relatively warmer ocean waters. A few winter waterspouts even developed. If you look right towards the center of this image, you can kind of spy one right there. Sometimes called snowspouts, they're basically little steam devils or whirls of fog that get vertically stretched up to the cloud base by convective clouds or clouds over the water. Naturally, I was at the beach that morning with my camera. Now, that obviously was an impressive event for Boston, but it paled in comparison to what hit Texas during and after Valentine's Day of 2021. That's when temperatures plunged 50 to 60 degrees below normal. In what proved the worst cold air outbreak since 1989, Dallas got down to -2, Houston fell to 13, and Oklahoma City got to 14 below. Even Kansas City made it to -10, and lows approached -40 in Minnesota. It was so cold that airplanes landing at DFW International Airport produced actual snow in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. They were flying through a layer of super cold water droplets about 2,000 feet above the ground. You can just barely see that right here. Notice how the temperature and dew point lines overlap where that little blue text box is. That's where the air was saturated and below freezing. As the airplanes flew through that layer, tiny particulates in the airplane exhaust allowed the water droplets to form ice crystals on them, and voila, you get snow. Same thing actually happened in Chicago in November of 2018. Here you can see a little snow band kind of arcing along the plane's approach path, obviously tied to those planes landing. Anyway, that was a wicked aside. Let's get back to the Valentine's Day Arctic outbreak. Look at wind chills on Valentine's Day morning. Talk about cuddle weather. The ground was so cold that it showed up on weather satellites as purple. That's a color usually reserved for tall, frigid cloud tops in the upper atmosphere. The unusual episode brought a severe thunder snow warning on Valentine's Day Eve. Yes, a severe thunderstorm with heavy snow and hail. At one point, the entire state of Texas was under winter storm warnings for the first time on record. They also extended from Acadiana in Louisiana all the way to the Great Lakes and the Canadian border. Impressive thunder sleet even rolled through Galveston, Texas. This plot, of course, from Blitzortung showing lightning rivaling a summertime thunderstorm rolling right along the Texas coast. That same batch of thunder sleet and thunder ice moved into Lake Charles and the Golden Triangle, southwest Louisiana, which had been ravaged by Category 4 Hurricane Laura about 6 months earlier. Talk about back-to-back wild weather. This is what the map looked like on Valentine's Day proper. That ice eventually moved all the way to the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. Ice storm warnings were even issued here in the nation's capital and across much of Virginia. This is what a 1/10 to a 1/4 inch of ice accretion looked like at the time. By the end of the episode, 73% of the lower 48 was covered by snow, which is the greatest amount in the database, which goes back about 20 years. Suffice to say, that's not how you want to spend your Valentine's Day. Meanwhile, bitter cold is just one side of the coin. Valentine's Day can and often does feature crippling snowstorms. Consider this infamous one back in 1940. Coastal New England saw 60-mile-per-hour winds and snow drifts to about 8 feet. The storm caught residents off guard who had anticipated only rain and light snow. The U.S. Weather Bureau, or the precursor to the National Weather Service, predicted the storm to stay largely offshore, which it did not do. 31 people died in that blizzard. Valentine's Day 2007 also featured a whopper snowstorm. It dumped heavy snow from Nebraska to Ohio and then lived a second life in the Northeast. You can see on satellite where some of the heaviest snow fell. For New England, this was mainly an inland snow event, but some places in the northern Appalachians did see 1.5 feet. Stowe, Vermont got the jackpot at about 4 feet, perfect for the ski industry up there. The parent storm system also spawned an EF2 tornado that struck Pontchartrain Park in New Orleans. It was one of 19 tornadoes to accompany the storm. That's a nice segue into severe weather. February can, and sometimes does, feature severe weather and tornado outbreaks. Climatologically, this is the time of year when you start to see severe weather chances creep into the deep south. Obviously, it's not as active as April or May, but periodic events can and do happen. Anyone who lives in the southeast might remember the tornado outbreak of February 13th and 14th, 2003. 17 tornadoes were confirmed, including an F3 in Camilla, Georgia, which killed 11 people. 6 others died as another F3 tornado struck Grady, Thomas, and Mitchell counties. Valentine's Day 2017 also featured a dozen small tornadoes around the Houston-Galveston metro area. Storm chaser Aaron Jack was naturally covering everything from right in the thick of it. He encountered minor structural damage from those tornadoes. Most of them occurred during the morning commute, peaking between 8 and 9 a.m. Now, we've talked winter, we've talked twisters. What's missing? The tropics. We haven't ever had a named storm on Valentine's Day in the Atlantic, unsurprising. But let's hop over to the Pacific. The Pacific is bigger and warmer, and their cyclone season is resultantly longer. Since the early 1950s, there have been 37 named storms in the West Pacific during February. Again, this is the Northwest Pacific. 3 reached Category 4 equivalent status, and 1 attained Category 5 strength. That one was Wu-Tip, which passed south of Guam during late February of 2019. Thereafter, it cruised into the East Philippine Sea, but fortunately weakened and never impacted land. In 2021, a tropical depression did form on Valentine's Day, later earning the name Juan as it became a tropical storm. It never strengthened beyond that, however, and if we zoom in here, you can kind of see exactly why. It had an exposed low-level swirl, and all of its thunderstorms were pushed west of the center, leaving it lopsided, and its structure was just kind of haggard and just never really got the job done. As far as I could tell, however, we haven't recorded a hurricane-strength system on Valentine's Day proper. That's a different story in the South Pacific, where February is actually a peak month for tropical storms and cyclones. That's what they're called down under for the Australia region. In 2015, Marcia formed a few days after Valentine's Day and made landfall as a Category 4 in Queensland. It had winds gusting near 145 miles per hour in its eye wall. Though $500 million in damage resulted, Marcia didn't cause any fatalities. It came ashore near Shoalwater Bay, a largely empty region of the coastline. On the west side of the Gulf of Carpinteria, meanwhile, Cyclone Lam made a simultaneous landfall on February 20th in the Northern Territory. Talk about 2 storms at the same time just a week after Valentine's Day. Very busy for weather forecasters down there. Of course, I hope you have Valentine's Day plans. I myself may make a Waffle House run, but you know we'll be tracking anything that brews around the clock. Keep it tuned to MyRadar on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and of course right here in the MyRadar app. We'll see you around.
Follow MyRadar on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Download MyRadar on iOS, Android, Amazon Alexa, Xbox, and Windows.